Wouldn't it be great to be gifted? In fact, it turns out that choices lead to habits. Habits become talents. Talents are labeled gifts. You're not born this way, you get this way. Seth Godin. And my friends, if you want to become a charting master, someone who can look at the stock charts, find trades, be successful, 10 to 15 minutes a day, that is all we ask. Now, Patreon members, we had the live question and answer call-in session today. Thank you for everyone who joined us. I think it's probably the best one we've ever had. I found a teaching tool where I could teach about trade size based upon volatility and showing you how to set hard points for stops and for profits. Great teaching tool I found there. I was using the TradeView charts, which I've been using for our Patreon members for the Charting Crypto podcast that we sent out yesterday. Had some trouble uploading everything. I've uploaded it a second time to YouTube. I'm not quite sure why it's so hard to do. I'm going to send out a follow-up email with the new link. I don't know what the deal is. It's not a particularly long show. I think it's about 45 minutes, but it is solid gold. If you're not a Patreon member, sign up. We'll get you that information, plus, of course, everything else all our members get. And tomorrow, what comes out? The 20 weekly vertical crossovers. Let's jump into these charts. The S&P and the NASDAQ 100 both up for the day. S&P up 1.84%. NASDAQ 100 up 1.68%. 20-year bonds way down, reverting to the mean, hammering down 3.47%. Gold pulling back some, 1.04%. And Bitcoin. Now again, we're looking on the screen right now. You see the New York Stock Exchange Bitcoin Index. It only comes in once a day. I will tell you that as far as where things are with our Bitcoin futures, which are the ETFs that I am trading, particularly this one here, XBTF, the Eckert Bitcoin Strategy ETF. It has the lowest cost associated with it. Down around 0.60% is where they ended up at the end of the day. In fact, I've been in a trade on that and already cashed out half of it, waiting to see if I can get it to drive up any higher. May or may not, but that's okay. Already been making money on that. Now let's jump into the S&P 500 first. 1.84% up. What do we have for this week? We have a solid green spinning top. Lots of down movement on there, a little bit of up movement. A thin, it's not a doji, but it does show us lots of indecision. Still tending down. Price percent oscillator still heading down. Derivative oscillator negative. Nowhere near the lows we plumbed this last week. So we'll keep an eye on things. Price is still below that weekly trend line. 2-day chart pushing up through that 2-day trend line. Green open box spinning top, touching the weekly trend line there. Price percent oscillator is still negative. Derivative oscillator negative, losing downward momentum. Price percent oscillator is headed up. It's been negative for quite a while as it has seesawed up and down. We'll keep an eye on things still. Lots of downward pressure. We look at the half day. We see where it's gone up, slid sideways and down, and then popped up on Wednesday. So we'll keep an eye on things. Still positive. Price percent oscillator heading up. Derivative oscillator positive, losing a little bit of momentum at the end of the day. Above on this half-day chart, it's above the 2-day trend line and below the weekly, and we'll try to draw some type of trend line there. So that's where we are. Overall on the S&P, still have good bit of downward pressure. What about the Qs? NASDAQ 100, the tech stocks, still down. Pretty much a doji, but it is pushing through that weekly trend line. Price percent oscillator still heading down. Derivative oscillator heading down. 2-day, closer to a crossover going up than the S&P 500. We have 2 green spinning tops. That last one pushed through the 2-day. This one pushes through up to the weekly on this 2-day chart. No crossover yet. That typically is what leads the weekly. You can have them both cross at the same time. That's not happening here. Usually the 2-day leads the way. Half day heading up. positive, derivative oscillator positive, losing momentum. We see at the end of the day with a half day pushed through the weekly trend line, trying to see if we can connect anything better. But that's where we are. Some up movement there on the shorter chart, but again, that weekly still down, 2-day down also. So we'll keep an eye on things, particularly with things a little crazy in the world. We can expect, some continued volatility. In fact, you can see these volatility bands. That's what Bollinger Bands are. You can see how they're stretching out. That's showing you an increase in volatility. When you get a channel, of course, and it gets smaller and smaller, that is decreasing volatility as it widens up, particularly like it's done here with this drop. That's an increase in volatility. Of course, that matters a lot if you are trading options. And again, Options Made Simple, the Charting Wealth Way, available to all of our Patreon members at any of the 3 levels. First thing we send to you. Now, let's look at 20-year bonds. Down for the day, 3.42%. Green spinning top for the week after weeks and weeks, open box, after weeks and weeks of down movement. Price percent oscillator, though, still accelerating down. Derivative oscillator losing some downward momentum, but still lots of down pressure. We've seen the 2-day crossover and then lose some of that, particularly with this big down day here. Look at that wick on top. That shows you what all peeled off, but did end up nonetheless with a green open box spinning top. But you can see how much was lost, how much pressure was exerted to push that down. Price percent oscillator, like we said, is less than flat, still positive. Derivative oscillator gaining momentum. That's from all of that prior movement. Half day, this is where you can see 2 days of jamming up movement and then boom, rolling over, hammering through almost down to the weekly, pushing through that 2-day. So lots of downward pressure, at least for today, and still on that weekly. What about gold? Gold down for the day, 1.04%, but nonetheless, we have 4 nice weeks as things have moved up. We have hit a higher high, of course, this week. Candle is bigger than, is higher than the prior one, not as big. Of course, we love to see bigger candles, higher price movement as things accelerate like they did from, let's see, the week ending the 18th of February to the 25th of February. Bigger candle, higher high. We got a higher high here, but not a bigger candle. But that price percent oscillator spiking up, derivative oscillator heading up. So lots of momentum pushing on gold. We look at the 2-day. It's still heading up, still a green up candle. We do see the price percent oscillator moving up. That derivative oscillator is losing just a little bit of momentum. And we look at the half day. This will show you what occurred. Things popped up on Tuesday, sort of bled off in the morning and afternoon on Wednesday. Did not quite cross over, going down laminated there. See how things start off in the morning. Price still well above the weekly and above the 2-day. I hope gold just keeps rocketing. Now let's get to Bitcoin. As I said, and when I get to the smaller chart, I'm going to flip over to the futures chart. The reason I don't use that is it's not old enough. See, it didn't start even laying down candles until mid-February. They just created, remember these 3, BITO, BTF, and XBTF. These are Bitcoin futures ETFs. You still have the old standard grayscale Bitcoin. It is a trust. It's not an ETF. I've been doing my trading, and I would encourage you to practice trading if you're gonna, if you want to buy a share or two to do a real money trade. Now, can you lose a few bucks? Sure you can. If it's $41.07 a share, yeah, you can lose that all. I mean, you can deal with that. But the nice thing I like about doing some real money trades, what does that do for you when you do, small fractional amounts, $100 or less? It lets you enter the trade. It lets you set your profit and loss bands. It lets you follow that. It lets you do an entry. It lets you do a good till canceled sell order. It lets you do all those things that you need to get into the habit of doing all those calculations, doing the practice, because guess what? You're going to play just like you practice. So let's look at Bitcoin where it is. Green up candle for the week. Price percent oscillator still negative. Derivative oscillator losing downward momentum. So we don't have that crossover yet for that big trend C change where investor sentiment switches over and we start seeing some rocketing up like we've seen before. I mean, particularly when we saw things switch over back in August, went up. Then, of course, it took us out on the 2-day and then dropped 2 more weeks and then put us back in on a recross on the 2-day and rode it up and took us out right there around the top. It was just beautiful. So again, hope we'll have a chance to do that same kind of stuff in your practice trades on Bitcoin. That's where we are on the weekly 2-day. You know, we bounced off that 2-day trend line. Well, I'm sorry, the 2-day signal line. The price percent oscillator bounced off back on Thursday the 24th. And then we had a green spinning top, indecision, and then things popped up on this last one, just a jamming. Quite beautiful. And when we go from the 2-day to the half-day, we can see just days of movement. Quite nice. And I was going to revert over to XBTF for that last one. You can see of a bit more stuttered movement there, up and slowing down, up and slowing down, up in the morning, slowing down in the afternoon. But again, still going up quite nicely. Price percent oscillator losing a little bit at the, derivative oscillator losing a little bit at the end of the day, and the price percent oscillator shaving off a little bit of that angle. But again, going in the right direction, and we are waiting for that weekly vertical crossover for our all-in on those practice trades on Bitcoin. That's where we are, folks, as we end the day. Thank you so much for being with us. Don't forget, Patreon members, check your emails for the live question and answer session today. We sent you a video of it, whether you were able to join us or not. It's there. And going to be sending out a second email with an update on a better link to the video. And don't forget, at the close of the market tomorrow, we'll be preparing for you the 20 weekly vertical crossovers. We might get them in even a little earlier than the market close. God bless, my friends. All the best from the whole team at Charting Wealth World Headquarters.